Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Lost Sheep Podcast. My name is Cole Bissett, and I'm joined here today by
Nazario Pangallo.
and
Evan Bear.
welcome back to another week, another episode. We're all excited to be here. Get back going real quick. Just would like to talk about our weeks, see what's going on in our lives. Nazario and I had another cinematic experience last night to add on to our wicked one last week. And would you like to talk about that and kind of give an intro on that?
Well, but first, how you guys doing? Welcome.
Yeah.
Episode 37. How are we feeling? And just we got to get better at this part of it, guys. Please, if you want to share this episode, share our podcast. Make sure you like, subscribe, share it to whoever. We need to do better about that, hopefully.
Yes, we do.
Because we want this to reach as many people as possible. And we are very thankful for all of you that listen and that we are reaching. Even if it's just one person, but also you want to grow if we can. So yeah. But
I'm gonna run off screen.
Evan's running off screen real quick. But our weeks have been pretty solid. I feel like this has been like a pretty just chill week in every kind of way. We haven't had a lot going on. We had trivia night on Tuesday night that you guys were able to go to, which is a big Bama Catholic event that a lot of people come to. A lot of people from all over the campus, which is pretty cool. I unfortunately was not able to go. I was covering the Bama basketball game that did not go very well.
Yeah.
That we do not need to discuss on here.
Yeah.
But it's gonna be a great weekend of sports. I've been just waiting for this weekend. We've got tomorrow divisional round playoffs in the NFL, Ravens Bills on Sunday, and then the national championship college football on Monday.
And
don't
we
hit the
have
table.
keeping my hands off the table.
Yeah, we realized that when I hit the table last week, this microphone right here made a loud sound. Cole did graciously get us a stand though that we will have coming up.
So we will try to improve our podcast. What is it? Efficiency? Is the right word?
Betterment
Of the podcast. Betterment of the podcast. Yeah. I like it. But some other things around the sports world are going on this weekend. Barcelona plays on Saturday, and who also plays on Saturday? Lionel Messi with Inter Miami start off their season. The MLS season, although it's kind of like preseason, not actually MLS. I think they play Club America. But gonna be a fun one. Look forward to it. Seeing the GOAT back on the field. There's still talks that Neymar is potentially moving to the MLS because Al Hilal basically told him he was washed. And are not re-signing him. So more big news.
If at any point in my life I ever have a talk show or weigh in publicly on the image or public health of MLS, just take me out. Just tell me that devote my life to the mental hospital. It's so over for me. But real fast, I didn't want to share. I got a text from a buddy this week, just saying that he was listening to the podcast. But a guy back home who saw it reposted on my story and started to listen. So just like y'all were saying, it really does help. A repost, a subscription, anything like that really helps to grow the message and to get the word out there. So,
and so before we go into our quote, last night Cole and I were lucky enough. We finally, I think it was like 8 o'clock, and we were like, dude, this is the perfect time to watch Interstellar. And we know it's a long movie. We usually start our movies a little bit later in the day, so we're like, okay, this is a good time to start it so it doesn't get too late. So we watched Interstellar last night, and we'll talk a little about that movie specifically, but just overall, Christopher Nolan as a director. We watched Inception last week. I don't know how this dude thinks of these things. I don't know who writes all these ideas for these movies, but dude is insane when it comes to making a movie, making you feel just about every emotion while you're watching a movie. Some of his movies, I don't know if you guys all know who Christopher Nolan is, but Inception, Interstellar, The Dark Knight.
He did Shutter. No, David Fincher did Shutter Island.
But yeah, those are the three that come off right off the top of the head. But if you know him, he's one of the biggest directors out there. But Cole, do you want to talk a little bit about Interstellar, the wonderful movie that we watched last night?
It's a very slow-moving movie. It takes a second. I was telling Nazario, I said, while we were in the middle of the movie, I said, you realize we're an hour into the movie and he hasn't even been to space yet. He is still on the ground talking about going to space. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. And then we're about halfway through. Nazario says he's starting to get a little tired, and he's like, "Dude, can you believe there's still an hour and 15 minutes left in this movie?" And I was like, "No, it's quite ridiculous." But each and every minute felt like it was beautiful. The whole movie was very well designed, very well written. The the most iconic part about Interstellar, I don't know if y'all are gonna agree with me on this, is without a doubt the composition and the music. Um, it's very, very moving. It's meant to kind of sway your emotions in this direction and that direction. And he actually, I don't remember exactly how the idea came about, but he had, forget the dude's name, come into a Catholic church and play the organ. And they were just messing around with ideas, and this dun 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 dun, this theme started coming in to play more, and he was like, play that again, and then they started adding layers and layers and layers, and you get this beautiful, kind of uplifting, mysterious song that kind of just keeps you in the question, and kind of feels like you're out of the loop, but you're also in the loop at the same time. And it really does add on to the movie so much throughout the whole thing, and it's like, oh, I love that movie. I don't give 5 stars out a lot on Letterboxd, which is a movie app that we're all on, but I think it was a very deserving 5 star of mine.
I gotta agree about the composition, I'm gonna call it a
Score.
playlist, the score. But I do have to say, I think Interstellar is one of those movies that the score is the most critically, or one of the most critically acclaimed parts, but it's not the best part. Like every time I watch Interstellar, I'm blown away by, um, call it what you will, because I guess a lot of it was CGI, but like the cinematography of it. Um, when they're passing by the black hole, and there's that famous scene of like it's the way drawn back, and you can just see the pod spinning, and like the entirety of the black hole spanned across. Or even going to Miller's World or the water planet and seeing the wave come is just the cinematography, even down to when they're on Earth, right? The cinematography of the farm and shooting that, and really getting the the this heart-wrenching feeling behind their plight as humans on Earth. I think has always been one of the like pivotal instruments that he uses. And obviously, kudos to Christopher Nolan because he's an awesome cinematographer, and as director, you got to put all this stuff together, and creative genius comes in there, and knowing what you're doing comes in there, but also just having this idea and not ever backing down from it. I think in a lot of his movies that comes up, and I think it's going to tie in a little bit to our quote that we talked to later, but I think sticking with your guns and like going with what you know are two big things he does well. Whether you look at Inception, Interstellar, Tenet, blah blah blah, the Dark Knight series, a lot of his have pretty similar themes and pretty similar uh, like vibes to the cinematography and to the work that he's put in them, and it works. Sticking to your guns and his style is what sells. So kudos to him. Excellent, excellent director. Fantastic movie. I love who's the grandpa? Who's the actor that plays grandpa? I love him. He's a fantastic actor. Yeah, Finn McNissel. But his emotion in the movie is one of the best parts. I always love watching that movie, to watch how he reacts on screen.
Yeah, and there's also like a deep morality that you can find in a good amount of his movies. From Interstellar, obviously, like how much should you go to, continue humankind? What is worth it to sacrifice for so that the human race and the species can survive? And it goes from, if we knew his actor's name, but um, he's the butler in The Dark Knight, right?
Dude, yes.
And so he doesn't tell Matthew McConaughey's character that, the plane isn't for all the people on Earth to go to this new planet. Like, they're going to die. But he does it for the continuation of the species. And obviously, they find out about that, and they're very upset about it. And that makes you think about, like,
Michael Caine.
Michael Caine. And is it worth it to do all of this just so that the species can continue? Or should you just stay with your normal life and enjoy what you have with the species? So great meditation on that. And then he does this in a lot of his movies, but the one that comes to mind is The Dark Knight. And the whole villain of Joker is that he thinks that humanity is not good. He thinks that when they go onto the two boats, when they're overlooking it, both of them have bombs. Is one of them going to blow the other one up? And right there, you see Batman. Batman is hopeful about the entirety of humanity, that they're not going to kill each other. And Joker is on the other side, like, it keys into the survival instinct. That goes back to Interstellar as well with Matt Damon's character when he's talking about the survival instinct that will kick in for Matthew McConaughey's character. So just a lot of deep theological things to think about from those movies. But what do you guys think about those aspects of those movies?
So I kind of want to, I'm going to jump into the quote because I really do kind of get what you're going with. How it does relate to this movie a lot. And this wasn't my original plan with this quote, but why not? Let's just jump. Right. Let's go with it. Let's go with the flow, see where this is taking us. So the quote is, "You are not a failure because you fell. You are a failure if you refuse to get back up." I'm going to say that again. You are not a failure because you fell. You are a failure if you refuse to get back up. So fair warning. Probably going to be some spoilers talked about from here. Just
I think we've
be
already
aware.
talked about spoilers, though.
So if you're going to watch Interstellar...
Matthew McConaughey goes to space, by the way.
Yeah. So if you're going to watch...
Cover didn't give
if you get through the first 120 minutes of the movie, it
goes
to space.
So if you're going to watch Interstellar, I recommend you watching before this episode. Because,
or if you don't care about spoilers, just keep watching.
4-hour episode where we just splice Interstellar into this period. You watch it and you come right back to the podcast.
So I think one of the most unrecognized characters, despite her in a sense kind of being the main character, towards the end of the movie, you realize how important she actually is Murph. And so,
real quick thing, I find it so odd that they say her name so many times in that movie.
Oh yeah,
like
they do. Over
every
and over
sentence
and over
they
again.
talk to her, it's Murph. I'm like, why? I don't know. That's just besides the point. But it's an interesting thing that they say her name so many times.
True. I think that's a reason though, because from the beginning of the movie they were hinting at the fact that she was the person. I mean, they went back and had the flashbacks, and they're like, she was actually right about this and this and this, and then they had flashbacks from these scenes. I do think throughout maybe this emphasis on her name and her character being developed throughout the movie was for that specific reason. It was kind of just to give a hint. And I even told him from the beginning, I said, like right from the moment she said to stay, I said, she's going to be right. I said, just wait. I said, she's going to be right. There's going to be something about this moment at the end of the movie. And I was right. And
had y'all, was this your first time ever watching?
Yeah.
So that's why we're so into it right now.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, but with Murph's character, throughout the entirety of the movie, she did literally give up for, let's see, until she was the age of her dad. She kind of just quit, and her dad had promised her he will be back on her birthday on the day that she turns his age, and he wasn't. And so that kind of shocked her into reality, and she wanted to figure out what was happening. And so she realized that she needed to get back up. And so she went to the character, Michael Caine's character, and tried to help him solve the problem of gravity, which turns out he had actually solved years ago and realized that it didn't matter. It was worthless because he didn't account for relativity, or what was it?
Singularity, I think.
Singularity and relativity and all these other things. And she would not give up on the fact that the entirety of the human race on Earth is literally going to be wiped out, and that he had just become satisfied with it and was like, whatever. We have to do plan B. There's no other way. Mm-hmm. And so she got back up and refused to back down and found a way for the human race to survive. She solved the problem. Because she had figured out that the only thing that can travel between these 5 dimensions in the movie was it gravity and time, or was it just time? How was it?
Gravity can move through time.
Gravity can move through time, and she figured out how to do that and account for it. And so they were able to kind of the human race was kind of able to make it into this fifth dimension that the movie was saying all along. We were the aliens in the movie. The human race was the aliens in the movie. It was just us outside in a different time, far, far away. And you can see that when he wakes up and the world is literally like a circle because they hit a baseball and it goes up into a house that's on the roof. Like, it's crazy.
I don't know if is that a world? I thought it was a ship that they're like still waiting to get to the world. And it's like a circular ship.
Space
I believe it's
I don't know.
Yeah, because they said that they're still trying to get to her world. I'm not sure. Dr. Brand. Dr. Brand's daughter, who also is Dr. Brand. She's on the world that they're supposed to be going to. So yeah, they're like on the ship.
Yeah. Definitely interesting. You know, I'm curious. They had talked about making a sequel, and it's still in the talks. There's supposed to be one. At least if there is going to be one, they said it would be out by the end of 2026.
Yeah, and I think going back to what you were talking about with her, and one of the things with it, you are not a failure because you fell. You are a failure if you refuse to get back up. It goes into the choice to stay down. And sometimes it's very hard for us on our own to get up. And we see with Michael Caine's character in this movie, like he had chose to stay down with this problem that he thought, I can't figure this out. He's figured it out for years, but can't like ultimately figure it out to save everybody. He was down. He chose to stay down. He chose to go this different route to how to figure it out. But then came Murph, and she was willing to come and pick him up. She was willing and offered her hand to come pick him up. And obviously he died, so he wasn't really actually able to help, but she wound up doing that. And makes me think about, God, he sees Adam and Eve fall, right? And they fall, worse than ever. Like they fall into where we all should have sin and where we should go to hell. But God doesn't let us stay down and let us stay on the ground. And he offers us this hand. But what if we didn't have that hand to help us? What if we didn't have a way to get back up? Like we would stay down forever. So first off, just praise be to God. Great big thank you to the Lord for being able to say, here's his hand to get back up. And it's like the aliens in Interstellar. Like if the human beings didn't have that, like if they didn't have that helping them on Earth, like it would have been over. Mm-hmm. It would have been over. And if it wasn't for God reaching out his hand and saying, here's my hand, help you get up, it would be over for us. There would be nothing that we can do. And it is not simply putting your hands on the ground and pushing yourself up. It can be as simple as just reaching your hand out and grabbing God's hand and allowing him to pick you up. And that's sometimes all we need to get back up off the ground after failing. Over and over again we have to do that. And we have to fall back down, sit back. It's like, how do I get up? Just reach your hand back out again every time and say yes to God's willing hand, his offering hand, because it will always be there.
Yeah, I think also in a lot of these cases, and the direction I was going to go is I'm going to cue into this, but in a lot of these cases, there's a lot of extrinsic motivation. You look at, in Interstellar, you look at Murph, or even Matthew McConaughey's character, and they're both doing this for a reason other than themselves, right? So, okay, so Matthew McConaughey, he's doing this because he thinks it's the best for humanity. He thinks this is how he's going to give Murph a future. In the case of Murph, she thinks that, at the end, she knows that she can solve this and do it for humanity. She's not doing it for the critical acclaim that it's going to give her. And so I think this kind of finding your reason to get back up and continue is what it's all about. One of the things, and shout out Henry Haynes, and let's talk about Chelsea. But one of my favorite players ever in soccer is Eden Hazard, and he is one of these brilliant players, and I think he's now retired or playing in.
He's somewhere. I don't know where he ended up. Yeah, he's somewhere.
But growing up, you'd see this guy, and I mean, magical. One of the best players you've ever seen, just can do stuff that nobody else can do. But was also one of these guys that injuries just completely ravaged his career. He couldn't ever go more than 6 months without having some injury that would put him on the sideline for some significant time. And he still had a career. Like it wasn't one of those things where after injury 2, he sits down and he's like, look guys, this is hard. I thought the first time I tore my ACL, it was challenging, but the second time it's brutal. And so, finding your extrinsic motivation, like you were talking about, in our case, Christ. And I think a lot of people focus their extrinsic motivation on Christ, but a lot of people also focus on other things, family, right? A lot of people focus on money as their extrinsic motivation, but finding that reason why you can't give up is kind of one of those one of those ways that you continue to go. I think also you get a little bit in your head. I think is the first thing you have to beat. How many times have I talked about with y'all just the mental side of life is the first battle. And so if you can beat that first battle of you telling yourself that you're a failure and that what you're doing isn't enough, then you've already won half the battle. Because once you get yourself on board, it's a whole lot easier to do the steps, go through the process, and just continue to do the things you need to do to return to where you were in the first place.
So we're all part of an individual Bible study. Every single one of us here has the wonderful opportunity to lead a Bible study. And one of the concepts that has literally been beaten into our head from literally week 1 or week 2 of Bible study is this chasm complex. There's a gorge, big gorge, and we can't cross it, right? As humans, we can't do it by ourselves. We're not able to. But what we have come to understand is that God is this bridge that gets us from one side of the chasm to the other, and that nothing we do is going to remove that bridge. The bridge will not break. It is always there, just like God's hand is always there to reach out to us, right? It is up to us to make the decision whether to walk away and try to figure out a way across the chasm, some other way, which in a sense sounds kind of ridiculous, right? Because there's a bridge right there. Why would we not want to take that route? And we may try to find a way to cross over the chasm through many different ways and realize it isn't humanly possible to do it on our own. It isn't. We can't do it. Mm. And so this concept that you're not a failure because you fell, you're a failure because you refuse to get back up. I think it is 100% correct. If you refuse to get back up, if you turn your back on God and continue to try to find another way without going through God, you're never going to find that sense of peace because it's not going to happen. And so sometimes, like we talked about last week with humility being the realization of personhood, sometimes we really do need to take a step back, realize who we are and what our place is, and be like, God loves me. I'm being dumb right now. I need to turn around, take his hand, and let's cross the bridge. Like, it's right there in front of me. It's the easiest way to cross. Like, what am I doing? Why am I walking away? And so I think Murph's character, in a sense, kind of plays that role for humanity in this movie. I think she is the bridge that's giving humanity a chance, and you see her brother kind of playing the role of the coward that's trying to back away and trying to stay on the planet and doesn't think there's any way because he's stuck in fear. Fear has completely taken control of his mind, and he doesn't want his family to be saved. His family's got lung problems, and he has this idea that the world is going to be okay, but it's not, because he's turning his back on the person that loved him most in the world was his sister, and he turned his back on her, and she didn't give up on him ever. And you see that at the end of the movie when she made the realization that it was her dad all along, that was the ghost from the very beginning of the movie, and she embraced him with a hug. It didn't show remorse or anything. I truly feel like, in a sense, that is the role that God's playing for us in our life. I love the movie. I think the whole concept is great. So, yeah.
Yeah, and then also another thought-provoking thing from the movie is this idea that which you talked about with Murph and her brother is this, and I think Matt Damon's character talked about this as well. Like, we humans think so. I think it's like, I don't remember how he termed it, but basically like we think, one dimensional, like right here, right now, recency bias like crazy. That's what we're thinking about right now. And Matt Damon tried to say that he thought bigger than that, and
because we can't comprehend the 5 dimensions that were in the movie.
Yeah. We can't comprehend the 5 dimensions, and while we don't really know how many dimensions there are. That's besides the point. But God is like this all-dimensional being when we try to relate it, like where we can see it from this movie, to actually get some imagery of it, and he can see all of it and knows all of it, and that's where humanity becomes really difficult, because you try to be right here, right now, while God is like all knowing and all in every moment of time, and it makes things really difficult. And Murph and Tom, which was Timothy Chalamet, grows into a different character when he gets older, but they go through that as well, and we humans go through that. It's like, do we decide to do something because right now it's going to be the best, and we have no idea how it's going to go the rest of the time, but we know right now it's what we want to choose right now. Wow, we could choose something that's much difficult right now, but it could potentially do something much better. And it's really hard as a human being to do that and to try to make those types of decisions. And I don't know, it's just very thought-provoking from that movie to think about that. I really don't know where to go from that.
Well, I know you mentioned TARS at the beginning, and so I kind of want to try to, like, he's a robot, but it's weird because he really does, like, play a big role in this movie. It's almost like, and I know this movie isn't meant to be like a Christian, like we've turned it. It's not may not have been the original purpose.
I think that's one thing that's beautiful about life is my earphones just fell out of my pocket. But like, we are human beings. This is God's creation. It doesn't matter how much we try to do something that we think is our own idea, our own creation. We can almost go into Inception with that right there. But as much as we want to think that we as human beings doing it, if we're doing something that is inherently like as human as we possibly can get, then that is the most godlike it can possibly be on Earth. So like, this movie is like so beautifully human that like it's so beautifully has the image of God in it. And that's what's so awesome about it. As you talk about, like, this wasn't intended to be like that. Well, technically, the ideas that come in our head that are human are actually Christian and from God. Which is really cool to think about.
I would say it's less like, it's the closest we'll get to being God-like. I think that's a little bit of a poor wording, but just we're never gonna come close. We're never gonna be divine. So but I think it is one of those things that, like, if we're doing something out of, like, a desire to increase humanity, right, then like, you're going to naturally reflect God. Because, obviously humanity can create bad things, and we have. But are those in a desire to truly advance ourselves? No.
And it begs the question, are we really creating something that's bad, or are we just distorting something that God created that was good? So technically,
and again, as humans, we can't create anything inherently because we are not creators. If we're doing something, it's already been created by God, and if we're doing something new that is not of God, then we are simply distorting that image or that idea that God has created into.
And we see it, and if we go back to the movie once again, we see this. God told us to be fruitful and multiply, an inherently good thing. But then we see the distortion of it, whether it's from the is it surrogacy, like IVF, like the embryos, and that's a distortion of it, of what creation is supposed to be. And then Matt Damon's character, it's kind of like prideful, like, I need to advance humanity in this one way. Like, I don't care if I kill somebody. And like, we see how it's distorted the good creation that God has made. So just another way to think about how we can only manipulate what is good into bad, and that's how something good becomes bad.
Yeah.
So what I was going to say about Tar's character is he's kind of like, I would say he's almost like a physical depiction of what our guardian angel kind of looks like to us. And it's funny because like throughout the entirety of the movie, he's in an explosion. He's in the waves. He's in a black hole, and somehow at the end of this movie, despite being in the middle of every death, like it killed people, every single one of those killed somebody. He's fine. But he was there with each of these characters until the end, literally. And so it's very, very neat to kind of see that. And they mess around with Tars because he's still a robot, and so they talk about his humor setting, his honesty setting, and joke around with him. But it was kind of like Matthew McConaughey's voice and his reasoning when he decided, in the end, ultimately just to go straight in head first into a black hole.
Spoiler.
Yeah, spoiler. And he, the first voice he hears when he's inside this fifth dimension is Tar's voice, actually. And so it's very neat because I do kind of think it may not be 100% that depiction, but I think he does kind of play that similar sort of role. So yeah, let's go ahead and transition into our PPP. We'll get right back to our quote at the end just to talk about final thoughts. Anything else we want to talk about? Nazario had the idea for the PPP this week, so I am going to send it over to him.
So last week we asked you guys if you had the time and the dedication to choose a in-a-year podcast, whether it was Bible in a year, Rosary in a year, or Catechism in a year, to start and to hopefully continue throughout the entirety of 2025. Did you continuing with Bible in a year?
Yeah, I wasn't 100% consistent, I will say, but I did get back into it.
And you are doing Rosary in a year?
Rosary in a year. So today would be day 6, which is correct because we shot on Saturday last week. So not catching up yet, but I'm staying consistent, which I think is as someone who's never done this, more important right now. But yeah, it's been going good so far. I have really enjoyed. Shout out Father Mark Murray Ames. Just like very very knowledgeable, very competent, and he has done a really good job thus far. I really enjoyed the beginning. I know I talked about this. I think I talked about this with y'all last week, but in the first phase, they do a lot of Lectio Divina and meditating, and I'm really enjoying that. Just putting on my headphones. They have the nice, noise canceling, so you could drown out everything and really get that focused in. And he also, I gotta say, he leaves a lot of time for. My camera just turned off.
Here it comes. It'll be right back on.
He leaves
my usual phone call during podcasts.
Typical. He leaves a lot of time for silence in between. So as he's doing the meditation, I find a lot of people fill the space fully, which can be very distracting for me. But he leaves a lot of time where he'll say a statement and then he'll give you 10 or 15 seconds to sit with that. Today's meditation, or yesterday's meditation, was about Mary's rosary being indicative of a rosarium, which is like a rose garden. And so you're envisioning yourself in this rose garden. And he's giving you time in between each of these statements as he adds on layers of adjectives and of detail and of complexity to allow yourself to immerse your mind into this Lectio, into this kind of role-playing setting. And it's really been very fantastic so far, and a great way to pray. If you're unfamiliar with meditative prayer, it's one of my favorites, and it's very calming and centering for your body and your soul.
So if any of you guys have started a year podcast, please let us know which one you chose, how it's going, or if you need advice on how to start one, what do you need to do, or anything like that.
Down below.
Comment section.
There for you.
Yeah, and then if you're on podcast, you can reach out to us over just get on YouTube, Instagram, anything like that. We would love to interact with you and more of our listeners. But to get into this week's, it's something I've wanted to do better about and get started. You wake up in the morning, you try to thank God for another new day. You try to pray as you wake up and get ready for the day and everything like that. But what I'm going to challenge each one of us to do is to maybe wake up 5 minutes earlier than you usually do. You try to wake up like as college students, we wake up like as late as we possibly can to make it to whatever we're getting
3
to.
minutes to class, so I wake up 4 minutes early.
Yeah. So we're gonna try this week. Maybe it'll continue after that, but we're gonna try this week. Wake up 5 minutes earlier than we usually do, and get straight on the ground and kneel right away in the morning, and just spend just 3 to 5 minutes praying and intentionally praying, not just like getting ready, going to brush your teeth, and like praying during all of that or whatever it may be, but intentionally praying in the morning to begin the day. And I find myself just a couple minutes as I get into the day, like maybe an hour, I'm like, oh, I didn't really, wasn't the greatest morning prayer to get started for the day. Mm-hmm. So this is the way that we're going to try to do better about that. And so, right when you get out of bed, go right down on your knees and just spend a couple times. You don't even have to say anything. If you don't have anything to say for the morning, as Evan talked about with meditative prayer, just sit there and listen for a moment and just be there with God. So intentional morning prayer is what we're going to do as our personal prayer practice for the week. You feel good about that?
Yeah.
I think we
all
I
like it. I honestly want to piggyback off of this for next week's challenge. Why not? Did I just beat you to the punchline?
No. Week early, man. You were supposed to keep them hanging.
Yeah.
My bad. Piggyback off of this into next week.
Just cut it out. Bleep it. Bleep it in the episode.
Yes.
I probably will. I'll do it. Why not? What timestamp are we on? So I remember.
39, 10.
Okay, 39:10. I'm gonna bleep.
But you gotta leave all of this in so that.
Oh yeah, so that it's funny.
So it's hilarious.
We're live.
No, definitely. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and switch over to our shepherd of the week. Never mind.
I do want to drop a poll real fast. And this is, I'm curious on what y'all do, but also engagement for you people. So a lot of research studies and stuff like that on what you do as soon as you wake up in the morning. So in the comments or wherever you're watching, drop down below. And if it's already pray, that's fantastic. Put what you pray. But what is the first thing you do in the morning as soon as you wake up? But what is it? What would that be for y'all? What are we changing out of, I guess?
So most of the time when I wake up, at least with recently, because we've started a morning routine of working out Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. The way it's looked for me, getting the gains. But the way it's looking for me recently, funny enough, I guess it depends on the morning. Sometimes I will literally get straight out of bed and start putting clothes on and get ready because we will wake up literally 2 minutes before we have to walk out the door. Other times it looks like setting my alarm for 7:10, waking up, and then setting my alarm for 7:12, waking up, and then setting my alarm for 7:14, and waking up to get to workout at 7:15 because it's a little walk down the road.
1 minute.
Yeah, but
1 minute walk.
But I found that the best days for me are the days that I don't do that and just get straight up because I will go straight. I'll change, go straight downstairs, fill up my water, and Nazario is ready at the door for both of us, and we go. And it's been awesome having that. It's been awesome having him because something for me is I'm really good. If it's something like cross country was in high school for me where it's a set practice time, I will be there every time.
Yeah.
If it's something that I'm independently responsible for, trying to do it on my own time, I'm pretty terrible at being consistent. So having him there with me definitely is helping me keep it consistent, and it's been awesome so far. So
yeah, I try to get out of bed, but I know one thing, you're not really supposed to look at your phone right away. It's really tough with us with having alarms on our phone. So I try to turn my phone where I'm not really looking at it directly, so I don't get that immediate light from it. So I'm kind of turning it sideways, or I'm clicking like this just to turn it off. And then usually I have to go to the bathroom. So that's how I usually start my day. But we're gonna try it. We're gonna try this. It's gonna work out. We're gonna do it for the next week until we record next, and then maybe we'll just continue it for the rest of our lives, hopefully. So Cole, who is our shepherd of the week?
I'll go ahead and intro him. Funny enough, the reason I picked him is because of the movie last night. Well, not really. He's got a lot, but Matthew McConaughey is our shepherd of the week.
Throwback to the original episode. If you
first episode of the Lost Sheep podcast.
From the Lost Sheep podcast.
Yeah, yes, he is.
Do you remember the quote?
Oh Lord!
Do you remember the quote?
Remember the quote? Do you?
Yes.
You remember the quote?
Mm-hmm.
That's impressive.
Like, he went look.
No, I promise you, I did not.
There's
look.
no way you
I
knew
pro-
that. He was
No,
like,
I
totally
just-
before he was like, oh yeah.
No, I just remembered
Oh.
it, and you'll remember when I tell you it. It has to
It
do
was
with
good.
it has to do with grammar. I'll give you that.
It was good. It was a good quote.
You guys ready?
Yeah.
Life is a series of
Oh,
commas.
Yes,
Period.
I knew it. I knew it.
Dude, that was actually such
Fire
a good
clip.
quote, though.
That's what
yeah.
we started on, and now we're bringing it back to him. Really for the start of season 2 of the Lost Sheep podcast, because it has been right around a year, like right now, from our first episode releasing. So basically, gone a full 365 days around the sun. Year 2 of the podcast, season 2 of the podcast, and bringing it right back to Matthew McConaughey.
I talked to him the other day about, I like that we have all our episodes laid out, like 36 this and this. And I will probably keep the numbers on the thumbnails, but I was telling him I think we should go on to Spotify and Amazon and all these things and make it seasons.
Seasonify it.
Yeah. Each year is a new season. And we kind of I guess our changes for this year. We have a new member, so and you literally joined pretty much right when we started the next season. So Evan is our surprise for season 2. But I think we should do that. But going back to Matthew McConaughey, Shepherd of the Week, the reason I mention him, obviously, really smart guy, known around for the way he says things, his wisdom. He's a smart man. He's got a book called Green Lights, which is, I'd say it's a really good life advice sort of book. You kind of see his struggles throughout his life. And when something bad happens in his life, he'll get this. He likes to, Matthew McConaughey, he's like, red light, green light. Because if you should listen to him read the book, it makes it way better.
I'm not going to lie to you. It's always, audiobooks have never been a real big.
Yeah, neither for me.
I've never been a real big fan. But also listening to people who listen to celebrities read books, I just can't do that. That's kind of weird for me. Like that's a
he
weird.
did write the book though. So
it's like an autobiography.
Yeah,
so
that's probably fair, right? But it's like people will like Oprah. I think has a whole series of just like reading random books.
Yeah,
so,
I wouldn't.
Why do you desire Oprah to read a book to you? Like,
yeah. I like it because it's his life story, and so I feel like I'm getting more of a in-person like experience of it. So it's really neat. He has a lot of lessons. He's openly Christian. Talked about his faith life, his troubles with his faith life, and just seems like a really person all around. I think the intention of Interstellar was to have a good moral message in the end, which is the whole reason for Murph's character. So him starring in a movie like that, I think also shows his character. And then he is what is it called? He's like Texas's hype man, but he actually has a title.
The Minister of Culture.
Yeah.
Minister of Culture. So for the Texas football team, his job literally is to be there and motivate these guys to be their very best.
You're wearing
all
Texas
the time.
color hat right
Yeah.
I am wearing a Texas color hat. However, I love Matthew McConaughey. I think he's a great guy. I think he's a fantastic actor, no doubt. However, I do have to disagree with his choice to become the Texas Minister of Culture. I think that's a stupid thing. But I'm also a heavy Texas hater. So I think my opinion on that is less founded than science. So.
But yeah, that's our Shepherd of the Week. Any final thoughts on him before we go to our final thoughts on the quote? All right. Who would like to start us off? Final thoughts.
I'll start us off because I want to get back into TARS. Because I think he's he's kind of one of those supporting characters that not steals the show, but steals the show almost.
Yep.
I think there's this whole slew of movies where the director, and intentional or not, the director has a really strong supporting character that does this, that steals the show, or that becomes almost more important than the main character. And I think when we look at this, like when we look at Interstellar, you can argue on who the main character is, right? Is it Matthew McConaughey? Is it, what's her name? Dr.
Brand.
Dr. Brand. Is it Dr. Brand's daughter, Dr. Brand? Is it Murph? Like, who the main character is kind of, blah, 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 right? And Christopher Nolan, I think this is another thing that he carries through his movies. When you look at Inception, it's a whole group of protagonists. Even when you look at like the Dark Knight series, like Batman could be the main character, but also like Joker could be the main character.
Really could, yeah.
Bane could be the main character.
Commissioner Gordon could be the main character.
Commissioner character, Ra's al Ghul, right? And all of these different people, like, because the story is so, and pardon my pun, the story is so two-faced that either person could be the main character.
It's really good.
But and so I think drawing back in this Tar segment is like, as you go through the movie, he's almost that character that you like the most because he is so relatable, even as a robot. And I think it's one of those things you talked about, the guardian angel bit of it, and he does kind of take on this guardian role for them, almost to where at the end of the movie, and they've been in space however long at the end of this movie, that TARS becomes like a second conscience for them. And so I think TARS in this capacity as a conscience gives us a good idea of the people that we should look for in our lives. People we trust to bounce things off of. I think the other thing I want to draw back into is that when we fail, we're often alone. But the important part about getting back up is that you have to realize that you're not alone in that getting back up. I think a lot of people that talk about like, oh, this was the darkest part of my life. This was the struggle I was in. And I, thought I would never get out of it. And one of the first things they always say that I always read is, I was completely alone, right? And so having your support system, having a TARS to help you get back up, to help you to be that carrying person. And in the movie, he physically carries Dr. Brand away from, the wreck on the water planet. But having that person,
he's so fast, by the way.
He is so fast. Having that person be able to carry a little bit of your burden is really helpful. Whether that's a friend or a relative or etc.
I think like on a less serious atmosphere, like another character that kind of portrays that way less serious atmosphere is Olaf in Frozen. The most likable character I think in the movie, because he's Olaf. Like it's just him. I think you could say the same thing about LeFou in Beauty and the Beast, Gaston's sidekick. Like all of these characters bring in. It's funny because each of them are characters, but they show more character than the rest of them do. They show more of a likable sort of. They connect with the audience a little more, and that's what I think you're getting with TARS. But yeah. So my final thoughts on the quote. It comes down to human perseverance in the end, right? Our path to heaven is challenging, it's bumpy, but in the end, it's clear cut that God's there for us no matter what happens. And while it may seem foggy, there is still a bridge there, and God is still reaching His arm out to you. So I think the movie does an excellent job portraying that, and this is just a reminder I think we should all have on our day-to-day life is that God is always going to be the bridge to cross the canyon. So.
And to go back to supporting characters, I'm reading a book about all the apostles, and one of the best supporting characters that I don't know if he gets like his role, people think about it like that, is Andrew, the brother of Simon Peter. And if not for Andrew, Simon Peter, I mean, obviously he probably would have met God because it's still God's plan, but Andrew was the one who talked to Peter and ultimately got them introduced in the first place, because Andrew was a follower of John the Baptist, met Jesus. John the Baptist told him, hey, this is the Messiah. This is who I'm made the path for. And then Andrew goes back and tells his brother about that. And Andrew's just one of the best supporting characters of an incredible main character of Peter, who is very much a main character, like his aura, everything about him. Like he is just a main character as a person. Andrew was okay with being a supporting character. So maybe you feel like a failure because you're just a supporting character in your role. But maybe this is just a great reminder that supporting characters are much needed. There can't be just a bunch of main characters rolling around in life, or it's never going to work. We have to be able to be supporting characters for each other, and incredibly, it doesn't seem like there is a main character in our podcast. It just is three,
awesome,
as one kind of, which is pretty cool to think about. And for my final thing, for the final thing I have for the quote is one. I'm going to read it again. You are not a failure because you fell. You are a failure if you refuse to get back up. Some people could say and have this mindset like, oh, well, this doesn't matter to me because I'm never going to fall. I don't ever need to get back up. And I would just like to make sure that everyone sets this expectation that you are going to fall down in life. It is probably going to happen. Now, I will say this. Don't have that in the back of your mind like, oh, I'm going to fall down, like I'm going to fail, like right here. Still have incredible hope and enjoy in whatever is happening and believe in the plan of God and have that hope. But also know that, if you fall, that is what happens in life. Like, it is just going to happen. How many times in Interstellar did they fail and it seemed like it was over? They had to have incredible hope to keep pushing through that. And for the apostles as well, they had to keep going. Jesus literally died, guys. Like, the apostles had to sit there knowing our leader is gone. What in the world? What do we even do? To be able to have hope, even in the midst of failure, and to be able to get back up, to choose to get back up, is one of the most incredible virtues and character traits that we all can have. And so, pray for that, desire that, and hopefully foster that in your life. And as always, going back to last episode, make sure that God increases in us and we decrease as people. Thank you all for listening.
No, announcements.
Announcements.
You got it. Do you have announcements?
Yeah, I have announcements.
Go for it.
Merch by March. First of all, subscribe, comment, like, interact, repost this. I think we need to start a Josh Gad fan club. And then also, yeah, that's all I got.
All right. Well, thank you all for watching. We will be back next week. We're back on our schedule. Here we go. We're getting the podcast back, rocking and rolling, and that means we want to interact with you guys. This is our podcast, not just our podcast, our podcast. So please interact with us in any way that you would like. Send us questions. We'd love to do a mailbag episode with that. That would be a lot of fun.
That would be awesome.
If we could get some questions to just do a question and answer one, that would be very cool. So please do that for us. Cole, sign us off.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening. We will see you next week with another episode with better content and hopefully some cool guests. We will see you all next week. Have a good one.